Okay, so got the engine here a little bit more assembled, and got my helper here today, and so just wanted to talk about some of the differences between the '03 to 4 and the 5 to 7, and even then it's like 5 to 10 because they actually put the 6 liter in the vans from 2005 to 2010 because they couldn't get the 6.4 to fit. But so on this individual one here, the pickup's an '03, right? Like an early '03 or some shit. Um, and so you can see that we have converted it to the 5 to 7 style oil pump, the 5 to 7 style oil rails, the rocker boxes change, the glow plug harness is different. Oh, can you grab the old oil cooler housing, the one that's sitting on top of the bag there? We have a different lower section to the oil cooler housing because the one that came on this originally was all aluminum here. And you can see we broke off a little tab right here, which I say we did it, but it's actually like a design flaw. So the new one has a steel insert into the oil cooler housing right there. And so you can see just this section, the lower section there of the oil cooler housing is different. So this is not going to be like 100% the later style engine because we are actually using the old style turbo. And you can see we painted all the stuff here because we like doing fun stuff like that. But so, and I guess try and keep shit the same here. Which one's which? So, the older stuff is on the left, the newer stuff is on the right. So, on the intake manifolds, the main difference is this crossover section on the back of the intake manifold here. And the position of this tab actually changes on the '03 to 4 versus the 5 to 7. On this one over here, we have actually cut out that tab because we're putting an EGR delete on it. And that tab prevents you from removing the intake manifold. Like basically picture this tab on the other one there, but just without this crossover. That tab prevents you from pulling the intake manifold with the turbo installed. The turbos themselves change, and there's actually 3 different types of turbos. There's the very early '03, the later '03 and 4, and then the 5 to 7. And this is like to our knowledge at this current moment in time, because learn something new every day and whatnot. So this, don't take this as the word of God or something like that. But this is the early turbo pedestal, which you can see has a like horizontal bolt on each one of the connections, where the later style has a horizontal bolt on these two and then a vertical one right here.
And that would be the rear.
Yeah, and that would be like facing forward on the turbo pedestals there. There was actually a incredible number of changes even in the 2005 to 7. And so like these here are the dummy plugs and the standpipes. So like so. And that I can tell the bottom section of the standpipe doesn't change. And this is the 5 to 7 here. And it's really kind of funny because the only difference on the dummy plugs and the standpipes is just this little nylon backup washer.
And the size of the Allen.
Yeah. So you can see this one here being the older one, which I guess I said I was going to keep everything the same way. So older one, newer one. It's just the nylon backup washer on these two. And then the hex head, like the Allen size. Can you have your light on you? Yeah, there we go. The hex head changes. So the older one is a 10 mil. The newer one is a 12 mil.
And some of the aftermarket ones, you'll even see like a 1/2 inch drive or something like that.
Yeah, 1/2 inch square drive we've even seen. I have no idea what brand they were or nothing like that. And hopefully...
And same with that as well, the size change.
Yeah, same thing with the standpipe. The upper section of the standpipe. And so if you see just by pulling the valve cover, you can see that, which is really cool. This older one here is actually still in good shape, but what will happen is it will erode the O-ring there and cause a high pressure oil leak. And so the longer section of the standpipe goes in the rear section here, like next to the high pressure oil pump, and then the dummy plugs in the front. And you can see it looks like Christmas going on here, because we both have different colors of paint markers for when we torque something, that we each have our own color to make sure that everything is double checked. Can you grab Scott's fuck, words are hard. High pressure oil pump screen? And so I guess, well, we'll keep that away from the engine so we don't get shit anywhere. But so this was the later style oil pump. I don't have handy at the moment the early style oil pump. This here, I actually don't know what they call this, but originally this piece here, like the outlet of the high pressure oil pump to the inlet of the branch tubes here was actually a 2-piece, and they called it the STC fitting, which was snap to connect. And it was just designed for them to be easy to assemble at the factory. You know, I would assume that they would have the high pressure oil pump in place and then slide the branch tubes in from the rear and snap it together. Those were known for blowing apart on the 5 to 7. To my knowledge, that actually wasn't a problem on the 3 to 4 I'm aware of.
I don't know if it was the same design all throughout all the years until they updated it. But the ones that we've personally had in the shop that have failed have all been 5 to 7 trucks.
And so the cure for that is this single piece STC fitting here, which of course when it becomes single piece, then it's no longer a snap to connect. The other issue that the 2005 to 7s had is underneath, well, and the 03 and 4s were too. But, you know, you'll hear some people say that, you know, oh, if you're going to buy a 6-liter, make sure you get the 2005 to 7. But the 2005 to 7 in its original form, as it rolled off the showroom floor in 2007, still had a number of problems. One of those being this oil cooler screen here sits underneath the oil cooler housing there. And,
right about there.
And it's the last line of defense before the oil goes to the high pressure oil pump. And so everything should be caught by the oil filter itself, but if anything gets past the oil filter, it's supposed to be stopped by this. You can see this one has had a bad day. But the original ones of these screens, which we don't have at the moment, were actually, this screen here was plastic, and hopefully you can see it's a pretty fine mesh. But these screens were plastic and they would just blow out. And so you'd have just an entire chunk missing out of here. The later ones, I don't know what year they came out with it, but I've never seen one in a original pickup, you know, that hasn't been fucked with. The later ones are stainless steel, and you can see in the case of this one here, it has caught a lot of shit and has not blown out.
Ideally, you don't see debris on that screen ever, but of course we don't live in a perfect world. And a lot of times what happens is, or sometimes an issue that happens is that people will use aftermarket filters and or aftermarket oil filter caps. And depending on the combination, it actually shortens the length of the filter and cap assembly altogether. And so then potentially you are bypassing dirty oil, correct, Matt?
Yep. And crap. And so the problem with that is that this here is the drain valve for inside of the oil filter housing, and so your oil filter will come down on here and it'll press on this drain valve right here. And so with the correct length oil filter, the oil filter will come down here and press in like so and hold it down in there. But if you have too short of a filter, this valve will be lifted up and oil will actually bypass the filter and not go through the filter, but we've also seen it to where it'll cause low pressure as well too, because this returns back to the sump.
Yeah, so we've had some crank no starts, all because they had the incorrect or too short filter and or cap.
Mm-hmm. And we've also seen not just too short of filters, but aftermarket filters that collapse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so like they might have been the right length,
mm-hmm.
but then they collapse and then they're no longer the right length.
Mm-hmm. And even as soon as after 200 miles or something like that on a fresh filter and oil change.
Yeah, this dude went to Walmart for an oil change, and
while they do stock Motorcraft filters in Walmart or online, the lube change lane uses at the time he got a Fram oil filter installed, I believe. I don't remember what cap he had.
Yeah, had some or another cap, and the filter collapsed on that one and caused a no start issue, which is really actually pretty funny because we went down there and this guy didn't, first time we'd ever dealt with this guy, and stopped to get fuel and his pickup wouldn't start, and then we come down there and tell him that his pickup won't start because of the oil filter, and he looked at us like we had three heads on. He's like, no, I promise you put a factory filter in there, it'll fire right up, and sure as shit it did.
Mm-hmm. And you could see as soon as we cracked the cap on this guy's truck that the oil filter housing had already been drained to oil. It wasn't once you got the filter out and the oil slowly drains out, it was bone dry.
Mm-hmm. And I guess just to show here, this is the oil filter housing as it would sit down on top of there. You can kind of see the bolt pattern, and so it's got a cartridge filter that sits in there, and then the fuel filter there. I guess what else that we done specifically to the engine aside from the front cover?
I was gonna say if you'd like to address the front cover.
Yeah.
But rocker boxes being different.
Yeah, rocker boxes are different. Again, I don't have the early style oil rails handy, I don't think anyways. But just they're totally different than this one here.
We do have a rocker box though.
Yeah, we do have a rocker box, but you can't see too much. But yeah, rocker boxes change. Of course, standpipes are totally different. High pressure oil pump, yada yada yada. And so you can see this oil rail here mounts with 3 little bolts on the top there. And this rocker box is facing in the same way because you can see lift end on the front here. And it just simply does not have the provisions there. These here are separate totally, or those there are separate altogether. The other issue that we I guess not that big of an issue, but we actually didn't realize until just, 20 minutes ago or something like that. We got this front cover from a buddy of ours who mistakenly bought it, and so we got it for a screaming deal, and then decided to put it on this engine here because the original cover had a bit of cavitation on it, It wasn't too terribly bad, but
It's also got hard line.
yeah, we can't get the hard line out to change the O-ring on that. And I guess if you want to be the camera lady, so I'll hold this up here. You can see this front cover is more or less identical. These here change, which hopefully is obvious. But the other thing that changes is actually the size of the water pump. So the early 6-liter had a smaller diameter impeller in the water pump than the later ones. And so if you look at the distance between the bolt here and the O-ring, you can see there's a, I don't know what, half an inch or something between the two there. And then if you look at the other one, the newer, later one, it has, much tighter tolerance there, and this diameter here is bigger. And so this is the O-ring that goes to this front cover here for the water pump. And if we take that and we put that on the new one here, you can see it actually fits inside of here. And so on one hand, it's really cool, this engine that we're putting together for the guy, now we'll have a bigger water pump on it. But it's kind of annoying because I didn't know that at first, but you learn something new every day. This here is the part number for that cover. And was this for the F-Series or the Excursion?
It was originally purchased for a later Excursion.
Right, but this part number isn't specific to the Excursion, correct?
Not that I'm aware.
Okay, so that's the part number for that cover that we have on the engine right here. But the part number for the cover gasket seems to be the same between all the different years and all the different variants and whatnot. So, in my opinion anyways, if you have to put a front cover on an engine, you might as well get the later one and go to the larger style water pump, because obviously that was an issue that they addressed. I'm assuming that the original water pump didn't have enough flow. And grab that real quick so you can actually see that the bolt pattern on the water pump here is the same, but the diameter of the impeller versus the hole in here, and maybe I can just hold it up here and show that it flops back and forth versus this one here where it's a tight fit. And so it's kind of amazing how, the more that we work on these and the more that we learn about them and everything, because this is the first one that we've done a oil system conversion on, and we actually weren't intending to update the front cover there. We just simply needed a new one, and like I said, a buddy of ours mistakenly bought one, and so we got a screaming deal on that. But yeah, learn something new every day. These are just some of the differences between the engines, the different years of the engines. There are a whole lot more, and we would have like literally the fucking floor filled with fucking parts to show each and every single individual change. And of course too, what we're talking about here is just the factory Ford parts. It's not even getting into any of the cool kid go fast race parts or anything.
Keeping in mind with the update of the oil system, including the oil rails, that your ICP is moved from front here to on the valve cover, which then in turn will change your wiring harness. Right.
So on the 03 to 4, the IPR, which is this guy here, stays in this location. Or actually, I don't remember if one's in front of the other or whatever. But regardless, the IPR is in the rear on both of them. But on the 03 to 4, the ICP sensor is on the rear. On the later style oil system, it moves the ICP to right here, which is really cool because then it's a very convenient and handy spot to not only if you want to screw a gauge in there to, you know, check with the mechanical gauge, high pressure oil, you can also prime the high pressure oil system that way, and you can, fuck, words are hard. Air test it.
Mm-hmm.
You can take this out and air test it to see if you have a high pressure oil leak.
And just ease of accessibility to unplug the sensor for test starting, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And so you of course have to have a different wiring harness because, like I said, the 03 to 4 is here, and then now we need to reroute it all the way to here. So that changes the right side valve cover, and even the left side valve cover also changes between the years.
And then you have the glow plug harness on there, so if you want.
Yeah. So the 5 to 7 glow plug harness is flexible like this, where, you know, it's just simply wires and a wire loom, where the 04 or 03 to 4 is a
Hard plastic rail.
Is it plastic? I thought it was metal.
It might have like a metal
Insert or something.
Reinforcement, yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's fucking phenomenal how much changes between these. And, you know, like we were saying too, even between a, you know, 2007 pickup, there was a lot of updates on top of that, things that they learned and, you know, fixed and updated over the years.
After production ended.
Yeah, after production ended.
At least of the engine.
And I guess just thinking about it too, talking about like air testing the high pressure oil system. If you start reading around on the internet or, you know, talking to people or whatever, it is unfucking believable how often people will blame the high pressure oil pump for a no start issue. Fucking years ago, we drove out to a guy's place that he had put 4 high pressure oil pumps in the thing or something like that.
Yep.
Yeah, he had put 4 high pressure oil pumps in the thing, thinking that he was getting a bad high pressure oil pump out of the box like 4 times in a row. I guess you would think after the second one that he would have, you know, started questioning things a little more, but.
And it was an aftermarket pump, and so he kept warranting them through the
Through Amazon or whatever it was, which to me, just putting Amazon parts in these things just sketches me out to begin with. But on his, it turned out to be the Fickum. Mm-hmm. But anyways, so what I was going to say is we, in our experience, have never seen a high pressure oil pump failure. At least to the point that would cause it not to start. We've seen it where they don't make enough pressure like they should, but they still, you know, will fire up and run down the road and, you know, make, you know, halfway decent power as far as, you know, talking about like stock form, you know, not any big dog race trucks or anything like that. But yeah, we've never seen a high pressure oil pump failure. And we've even seen some high pressure oil pumps that have ingested quite a bit of debris. And, you know, every engine kind of seems to have their own, the one thing that people blame more often than not when they really shouldn't. And on these, it's the high pressure oil pump.
I guess I don't remember and I don't know all the changes from the 0304 pump to the 05 to 07. Do you remember the common failures with the 0304?
I don't know.
Was it like the gear backing off? Was it?
I honestly don't know. You know, I've always heard people saying that they were more problematic, but you know.
Was it because the screen? Was it?
Yeah. Was it the screen? Was it
the pump itself? Was it?
Was it an oil filter change? You know, was it whatever? I don't know, because of course, that 103 that we work on, you know, it's just unbelievable to see the fucking abuse that thing has gone through. And we did actually put a high pressure oil pump on that one, but at the customer request. That wasn't because of a failure per se. And like, it had ingested some shit, and it was still working to some degree. They just, you know, wanted us to put a high pressure oil pump in it. And like, obviously this one we're updating to the different style.
But he had taken it to a shop, had been told that they diagnosed it to a failed high pressure oil pump. He then replaced the high pressure oil pump, I believe, with a Napa pump. And then got the truck running, had it die on a test drive a short distance after getting it up and going and taking it down the road. and then he started tearing back into it. I, at some point, could not figure out what the issue was. Thought maybe it was air at first, and then dug into it a little further to the point where he had the engine a pretty good ways disassembled off the top end, and had left it open then for several months, where pine needles and all kinds of stuff from outside had gotten in. The hood was off the truck. It was halfway tarped. And so then that was the reason we dug into it further. Then he had torn it down the second time, cleaned everything, and then reassembled it with a new high pressure oil pump.
And actually, I'm really glad that you were talking about that there, because that reminds me. So the only place on these engines that you can see the camshaft, and of course, now we got the high pressure oil pump in. There it is. So you can see.
See you, load.
Yeah, I just need to get a better camera or something one of these days. But focus. There we go. So there's the camshaft, and you can see a couple lifters there. This is, and it's easier to see when the high pressure oil pump is out. That's the only spot on the top of the engine anyways that you can see the cam from. That engine had a really fucking nasty looking cam, and they didn't want to do anything about that, and I can't say that I blame them, because on these all the shit goes in from the rear. So like this is where your transmission would bolt up right there, and there would be the camshaft. And so in order to pull the cam out of these things, either the transmission has to come out, and some people do put camshafts in these things with the engine in the frame. Sounds like a terrible idea to me, but some people do it. But really what needs to happen is the engine needs to come out. These have probably their biggest mechanical weak link is the camshaft and the lifter design, which I guess is a rant for another day.
More so the lifters than anything else.
More so the lifters than anything else. And so this one here, when we were doing all this shit to it, we put in the updated push tubes or push rods, whatever you want to call them, that are actually, I didn't measure it, they're, I don't know, probably 20,000 shorter than the originals. And we actually have an engine that has flat spotted a cam and sent needle bearings. Actually, can you grab the oil pump? Sent needle bearings through the engine, and once we get this one done here, we can tear that one down and kind of see better what's going on there. So yeah, really most of the issues with these things, with these engines, like the actual core mechanical bits of these things seem to be, you know, somewhat reasonably reliable. It's not, you gotta beat the fucker for it to come apart. But so you can see it has ingested and chewed up some needle bearings, so that's always fun.
Could have been one, could have been many.
Yeah. And so this is the low pressure oil pump that's just like right behind the balancer right there. Yeah. Anything else, madame?
I mean, just mention real quick the exhaust being full of gaskets, just that they don't have them. And,
Oh yeah.
you know.
Originally they do not have exhaust manifold gaskets. We put gaskets on this one just because we did not machine down the side of the head or the manifolds to be a super tight seal like they are originally. Yeah, that's just some of the changes between the different years. To my knowledge, nothing in the valve train changed between the years as far as lifters, push rods, any of that kind of stuff. Like I was saying, they do have an updated shorter push rod that is actually the same part number now for the 6-liter and the 6.4, but that was done after production. Again, don't know what year exactly, but after 2007 anyways.
And then I guess to mention that they now offer the head stud specific head gaskets. Just
Yeah, so that was something I learned at the Ford dealership just the other day. Is from talking to the Ford dealer from about mid 2019, Ford now is actually offering a head stud specific head gasket, and that's what we got for this guy here. And hopefully, and judging from everything else that Ford does, they did their research and homework on that, and that's actually going to be a good thing.
and you'll see it's a not see right now. It's a multi-layer steel with a blue O-ring, and we actually got a Felpro kit with the engine rebuild kit that is a similar style multi-layer gasket. I don't know if those are head stud specific or not, but with a black O-ring.
Holy fuck. Yeah. Somewhat see the part number there. But yeah, once we get this stuff back in the pickup and fired up, then I guess we'll pick up from there.